Hello, everyone, and welcome to week 2 of Foundational JavaScript. I'm Gray Lewis, super excited to be back. All right, today we're going to be covering the difference between vars, lets, and consts. Now, vars, lets, and consts are all different keywords for declaring variables in JavaScript. And it used to be, before ES6 was released in 2015, that vars were the only keyword you could use. So you declare a variable like var variable equals value. And now we can actually do it 3 different ways with vars, lets, and consts. Although at this point, there really is very little use for vars. I'm still going to try to demonstrate the difference, but know that it's generally best practice to either use a let or a const. So today we're going to be writing a little function as a demonstration called createSandwich. A classic example, we're going to take bread, the type of bread, the type of meat, and the vegetable being used as inputs or parameters for this function. And then we're going to construct a console log based on those and also create a sandwich. So to create a variable, we have those 3 options, vars, lets, and consts. And so what a const is it is a variable that is read-only in essence, meaning that once I declare the variable, const variable equals data, now variable cannot be changed again. It cannot be reassigned. This variable will always be this value. So let's go ahead and do a little demo of that. So we're going to have a little value that will print to the console after we're done creating this sandwich. So I'm going to go meat and vegetable sandwich created on bread. So bread here will be the type of bread. And then I will go ahead and just first of all, let's create a sandwich with, I don't know, white bread, and let's put some chicken on that sandwich, and let's put tomato on that sandwich. And then we'll have it just console.log the sandwich log value. All right, and now let's go ahead and run that node index.js, chicken and tomato sandwich on white bread. So it seems to be working just as expected. So now what I want to do really quickly is we're going to actually construct the sandwich. So this is where I'm going to demonstrate the difference. So if we were to go if bread and meat and vegetable, so we're just doing a little check to make sure that these 3 variables exist, and then we initialize our sandwich array. Then we try to access it, so we'll go sandwich.push bread. Then we're going to actually run into the issue here, as you can see, sandwich is not defined because this let keyword, it's going to be a block scoped variable. So this is considered a block because anything in brackets is a block, basically. And we have the let keyword in here, so it is only a variable when you're inside of this block. So if I were to try to sandwich.push in here, it would not cause a problem. Now, the old behavior, var sandwich, would actually work if we do that. Now it works because there is not this block scoping when you use the var keyword. There's only function level scoping and global level scoping. So within a function, a var is a var, and it will work within that function. And on the global scale, you can declare variables with that keyword and it can be accessed anywhere in the file. Inside an if statement or any other kind of block that isn't a function, the var did not have its own scope declared when declared. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this since it was just for a demo. But instead of using a var, we're going to go ahead and use a sandwich let. So if we need to, use a variable that's going to be modified and reassigned, we use a let. It's important here to note in the difference between a let and a const that although a const does create a constant value in a sense, with objects or arrays, you can still add or remove elements or properties from the values of those objects or arrays. So you cannot reassign the variable, but you can still add or remove or modify the properties or elements of an array or object with a constant variable. And then we're going to go sandwich.push bread, and then we'll go ahead and meat and then vegetable, and then obviously we're going to need another slice of bread there, and then we're done. We're going to have the sandwich. So I'm going to go sandwich, and then we will go ahead and print out the sandwich, and let's see how that turned out. So there we go. It's white chicken, tomato, white. That simple. So pretty simple stuff. We have lets, we have consts, and we have vars. And we know that block scoping is the major difference between consts, lets, and vars, and also that the introduction of a const keyword allows us to declare constant variables which cannot be reassigned. Today we're going to be talking about strings and numbers. Now these are two of the most core data types that we have in any programming language. And today I'm going to be telling you a little bit about how they work in JavaScript. So first of all, I'll be covering some methods that we can use with strings that are built into the string type. First of all, you can actually address a string somewhat like an array. If you're familiar with arrays in other languages, you can use the bracket syntax here to type a number. And that will address an index in that string. So here we have the name Nathaniel Clearwater, and if we go to the 0th index in that name, then we will see that it is a capital N. And we can also do that using an actual function that is a method on the string type. We can do a char at, which is pretty much the exact same. I prefer the array-like syntax because I think it is prettier. And then one of the most powerful methods that we have in JavaScript, can you classify this as a method? Not really. It's really more of a syntax for defining and combining different strings and values. So before template literal syntax was available in JavaScript, which is before the ECMAScript 2015 standard was implemented, concatenating strings was pretty complicated. So you would have to use the plus operator to combine the strings, and you'd have to think about, okay, do I have a space in this first string? And you can see here that we're going greeting plus name plus exclamation, hello, Nathaniel Clearwater. And this is a lot of code just to combine a few strings. And now in ES 2015, we have a very simple pattern. We just go sentence equals, and then we use the backtick, which is a sort of which is a symbol that we're probably not used to using too much, but it is an extremely powerful one in JavaScript because it allows us to use this template literal syntax. And what we can do here is we can do $ and then brackets to just insert any expression right in there. So we have the name Nathaniel Clearwater, and all we have to do is insert that here. And we're able to just construct the string around that variable really easily using template literal syntax. And now moving on to numbers, we're going to first cover the different methods in numbers. And unlike other programming languages, the JavaScript number type supports floats and integers. And what that means is that we can actually do decimals within numbers. We don't have to worry about whether they're whole numbers or whether they are whether they would be a float in another language such as C, for example. And also, as we're going to talk about a little bit later in our operators video, JavaScript's typing system supports cross-type comparisons through variable coercion. So we can actually check if 0, the number, equals 0 as a string, and that will return true because we are able to do cross-type comparisons. And then we also have two really nice methods built into the number type in JavaScript, parse integer and parse float. What this will allow us to do is input a string and without having to do any sort of messy cross-type assignments, we can just take a string, which might be like 345 in a string, and turn that into a number really cleanly. Same with the float, the parse float type. Note that we do actually in this case have to think about the distinction between an integer and a decimal floating value. And yeah, as I say here, cross-type comparisons are useful, but whenever you do use cross-type comparisons in JavaScript, you open yourself up to really nasty and hard to diagnose bugs. And then we also have what is in the math library, and it exposes us a few useful functions for dealing with numbers and doing things like rounding numbers or trigonometric functions like sine and cosine. And it also allows us to generate random numbers, and we can round numbers by doing math.floor or math.ceil, which is short for ceiling, obviously. Floor will obviously round down, ceiling will round up. And yeah, so you can actually look more into the math library online. There's a whole bunch of powerful functionality packed into there, and you're going to really need to be familiar with these when you're working with JavaScript. Today we're going to be covering the array data type in JavaScript, a little bit of how to work with it, some of the methods that we can use with arrays, and also how they work under the hood in JavaScript. So you see here I have an array. It's out of alphabetical order, and I'm going to quickly console log here the type of this array. So let's just do node index.js. And interestingly, we'll see that it's actually an object type. And that's one of the interesting things about how arrays work in JavaScript is actually under the hood, they are just a special form of object. But we can sort of interact with them and completely ignore the fact that they're an object under the hood and sort of just use them like we would in any other programming language. So the most simple operation we can perform with an array, other than assignment, is to read a value from an index in that array. So going ahead, if we go in array 0, we're going to be capturing this first element here. Obviously, it is 0-based numbering for arrays. And then if we want to actually get the length of an array, we could just add .length. That's a property of the array, and we'll see that it is a 7-element long array. And then we can actually use that to try to query to the end of the array. If we do array.length -1, we will get the final element in that array. And one of the most useful, or one of the more useful really, methods that we can do with arrays is we can do array.sort. Now this is sort of a confusing function under the hood, so I'm not going to go too in depth about how it works, but just know that it'll sort things into alphabetical order, and it will also sort numbers by their value. So if we now run it, if we sort it and then we log the array, we'll see that it's now put it in alphabetical order for us. Super easy, super simple. Note that this doesn't just return a sorted version of the array, but it actually modifies the original variable. So after we console.log the original variable assignment, we're actually getting the sorted array. All right, so that's really most of what you need to know for the very basics of interacting with arrays in JavaScript. Today we're going to be covering operators in JavaScript. And because JavaScript is a weakly typed language, there are some interesting quirks and complexities to working with operators in JavaScript. And let's just jump into it. So I think the most complex thing to understand in terms of JavaScript operators is the difference between the strict equality and abstract equality operator. And if you're familiar with how typing works in programming language, then programming languages, then this might be somewhat self-explanatory. But JavaScript is a weakly typed language. And what that means is that we can actually make comparisons across different types. I can say 0 equals 0. And we'll get true, even though this is a string and this is a number, right? So that is called type coercion. So what we're doing is JavaScript at the runtime is realizing that these are different types and then trying to translate them into the same type so that they can be directly compared. And interestingly, this even works for something like 1 equals true, right? So 1 does equal true in a loose sense in JavaScript. And so if we use 2 equal signs in our operator, we're going to be doing an abstract equality comparison. And that basically means that we can do it across types. Now, I actually really don't recommend using the abstract equality operator in most circumstances. And that is because it can create some really weird bugs where you don't really know why 2 things are considered equal or not equal. Because there's this huge complex set of rules that JavaScript uses in abstract equality that unless you really have all of those rules memorized can be quite opaque and hard to understand. So in the vast majority of cases, I think it makes much more sense to use the strict equality operator. So in this, we do 3 equal signs and we'll see that indeed the string 0 does not equal the number 0 and 1 will not equal true. And I think that really simplifies debugging our code in a lot of circumstances, so I highly recommend doing that, using the strict equality operator. And so now moving on to the operator that you're already most familiar with, it is the assignment operator. If we let a variable, and then we go ahead and do variable equals 1, the variable will now be equal to 1. But one nice little syntactic sugar that JavaScript offers us is the ability to perform 2 operations at once by going plus equals 2. That will make the variable 3. And we can even do variable plus plus to increment it. If we then return variable, we'll see that it is now 4 after being incremented here. So yeah, those are a couple of the assignment operators that we have. We can increment, we can also decrement, we can directly assign, and we can assign with a mathematical operator as well. I can also do variable times equals 3 and now it's 12, and etc. And then one of the more useful operators, really mathematical operators, is the modulus function, which is basically just a dividing remainder function. So if I do 9 mod 4, then we will get 1 because 9 divided by 4 is 2, remainder 1. And if you've worked with any other language, really, you're likely familiar with modulus. And yeah, so these are the very basic operators in JavaScript. There's actually a huge amount of operators that JavaScript uses and gives you access to, including some more interesting and complex ones that we'll definitely be getting into later on. But for now, these are really the main ones that you need to understand. Of course, there's also the obvious ones here. So we can do equals equals, but we can also do variable is greater to or equal to 10. Oh, whoops, accidentally did an arrow function there. Greater than or equal to 10. We'll see that's true because the variable at this point is 12, and etc. So we can adjust these by just quickly doing that. Now it's greater than or equal to, etc. And yeah, so those are the basic JavaScript operators. I hope that this was informative for you, and I will see you next section. Thanks for watching.